The Talk Shop.
That was your news bulletin with Greg Gross. Thank you very much to Greg. My name is Naledi Muleo, standing in for Maschaba Mushweshwe this evening on the Talk Show. On the Talk Shop, it is SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader. The frequency is 104 to 107. We're still taking your calls on 0891 104 207, and the SMS line is 34701. SMSs are charged at R2. Continuing with the discussion on false rape allegations in South Africa, we'll take a look at some of the comments that we got on Facebook. We have Carissa Samuel saying, yes, it is an injustice to both the innocent party and women who have actually been through a violation. Now, the question we'd asked was, should women that falsely accuse men of rape be arrested? Should they face jail time? We have Calvin on Facebook saying, for sure, such kind of people should be arrested. People spend time in jail for nothing. And if it was me as a man and I was facing rape charges upon women, police would laugh at me if I was going to jail claiming that I was raped. We have Mandisa Kasana saying, no, our prisons are full and they should be made to do a community service for 2 years at women and children centers so they can see women and children that have actually been raped, and we pray that they see the error of their ways. We have Nkulu Walter Diemeng who says, that's cold and heartless. Why would someone do something so immoral? If you are a woman and you got caught, you must admit to your sins and don't let another man pay for your debts and your deeds. We have Malahleke Chauka who says, yes, they should. My little brother was a victim, and I almost spent 50,000 in legal fees. So he's very upset. And then we have Otolani who says, yes, and face the fullest might of the law. These falsehoods destroy lives and careers. Sipho Lucas says, indeed, they must be arrested. Wrapping up that discussion, still taking some of your calls on the discussion that we're going to be moving on to next. Now we're talking about the future of South Africa's economy. Now, Clem Sunta examines the probabilities of South Africa retaining its position as one of the top 59 countries with the largest economy in the world. Clem cautions that the 750 billion rand that is needed to sustain our water supplies, the 500 billion rand that is needed for Eskom's next generation of power stations, and a number of policy uncertainties can deter foreign investors. The current euro debt crisis is also a contributing factor, and this will probably lead to us being kicked out of the G20 and replaced by Nigeria, which could overtake us by 2020 to become the largest economy in Africa. We have Clem Santa, the News 24 columnist. Clem, how are you this evening?
And yeah, you've explained our challenge very well.
Thank you so much for joining us, Clem. Let's start at the very top. Are you in favor of an economic CODESA, and would it assist in keeping South Africa in a favorable global economic ranking?
Yeah, you see, what I feel was the CODESAs we had in the early 90s, CODESA 1, CODESA 2, which ended up with a new constitution and an election, and lots of deals were done. It showed that, when people from different groups actually get together, they do enter the spirit of give and take if the occasion is big enough. And whilst we negotiated a political democracy with those two CODESAs, we did not negotiate an economic democracy. And whilst we've had free and fair elections from 1994 to this day, we don't have a free and fair economy at all. We still have a highly concentrated economy, and I feel very strongly that we need an economic CODESA now to see how we can get more people participating in the economy, bring down the number of employed, start off many more small businesses. How do we really excite South Africans to become economic actors rather than stay on the sidelines as unemployed people?
But now the International Institute for Management Development, based in Switzerland, publishes a list of 59 countries in its annual World Competitiveness Report in May. And this year, South Africa was ranked 50th, having risen from 52 just last year. But before that, we were in the 30s and we were in the 40s. So what does this mean for us? Are we becoming poorer?
Well, the analogy I use is that the 59 countries are the Premier League of nations. And we should be 32nd because we are the 32nd largest economy in the world. And that's why, to begin with, we hung around in the 30s. But what has really made us fall down to the 50s is policy uncertainty, deterring foreigners from investing in South Africa, and particularly talk of nationalization, because, what foreign investor is going to open a mine in South Africa and worry about then that the government's going to take it over?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. And, you mentioned policy uncertainties that deter foreign investors. Policy such as nationalization. What about media tribunal, land reform, and that sort of thing?
Well, let's sort of, let me give you the other side. The other side is that South Africa has been very well managed financially since 1994. Trevor Manuel has did a great job, and Pravin Gordhan now is doing an equally great job. So on the question of the stability of the tax system, the excellence of the South African Revenue Service, those are two reasons why South Africa should remain a Premier League nation. So what it is, it's all this kind of chirping from the sidelines about, we're going to nationalize all the mines, or we're going to take over all the banks, or we're going to confiscate all the land. That gets aired in the foreign media and doesn't give us a very good image here. I understand where the frustrations are coming from, and that's why I feel strongly that we need this economic CODESA, because, people do not think they're getting a fair deal. And, in Zimbabwe, there was never any negotiation about ownership of land. And, the pressure built up, and eventually it led to land invasions. And that actually stopped Zimbabwe in its tracks. It was growing as an economy at 8% per annum during the 90s. It was the fastest growing SADC economy. And the first land invasion, it hit the wall and then entered a period of hyperinflation, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the Zim dollar had to be abolished. And now Zimbabweans use US dollars and rands. But they've been through a very rocky patch. So people who call for things like land invasions or just preemptive nationalization of mines without compensation don't realize what damage it does to our image overseas. Mm-hmm. So these are red flags, and it means that when we try and raise money for that 750 billion. That we need to sustain our water supplies, and the 500 billion that we need for the next generation of power stations, you get people stroking their chins saying, well, I heard these remarks last week. Should I really lend that money to South Africa? And an example is Greece. I mean, very few people are going to lend money to Greece at the moment because everybody knows that Greece is the bad boy of Europe and has some very dodgy bonds, and I mean the interest rate on those bonds has now reached 30%. I mean we are still 3.5% on our international bonds, so we're still, relative to Greece, thought of very well in the world. But we really must have a sensible conversation about how we can address these inequalities, rather than just have people, saying things from the sidelines.
Yeah, well, I just want to actually just move on to something else now. You're talking about the discussions that we're having in the media and the effect that this has on the future of our economy as well. But, the political landscape, it really does have a big standing on that. But in your article, you spoke about small businesses and entrepreneurs having a better chance of surviving, but the government may not be so lucky. Why is that? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. The reason that I talk about entrepreneurs and small business is that Jacob Zuma set a target of creating 5 million jobs by 2020.
Sure.
There is no way that big business is going to create 5 million jobs, because they've changed their employment model from the old days where they did everything to now where you subcontract a lot of the non-core activities of a business to other businesses. I mean, take my own company, Anglo American. We had 450,000 people in all the group of companies in the 80s, and now we're down to 91,000. Sure. There's no way that Anglo is going to go back to anything close to 400,000. And the same for every other big business in this country. Government is not going to take on an extra 5 million civil servants because they haven't got the money to do that. And public works programs are a temporary solution. You know, when we built the stadiums for the 2010 World Cup, they employed a lot of extra people, but the stadiums were completed in January 2010, and then all those people were laid off. So the only way we're going to create 5 million jobs is to create 1 million new businesses. So my challenge to government is, how are we going to create an environment which supports all the entrepreneurs with bright ideas in this country to open new businesses? And then how are we going to change the labor laws so that they're not too onerous and these entrepreneurs then are prepared to take on additional people? That is the way you'll get to the 5 million jobs.
But now you're saying that to create 5 million jobs, we need to create 1 million new businesses.
Yep.
How friendly is really opening a business in South Africa? Are businesses succeeding in this country? Are we seeing businesses that are able to sustain themselves?
Well, we are, and there are lots of fantastic businesses. I mean, in the Cape, I've been to Khayelitsha and the Khayelitsha Chamber of Business, and there's lots of fantastic businesses there. And we call it the informal sector, but what we should be doing is selecting the champions of those businesses sitting in places like Khayelitsha, and then saying, how can we expand those businesses so that they can become part of central Cape Town? In other words, how do we integrate the informal sector into the formal sector? Because there are already thousands upon thousands of entrepreneurial champions in the informal sector. It's just that they need the backing, the cash, and the support from both big business and government. And the thing about entrepreneurs is it's a very hostile climate out there. I mean, I run a small business myself, and there's two things that really stand out. One is that big business and government aren't that good at paying you when you do a service for them, you know, and then you have to fill in all these forms saying you're an approved vendor before you get paid.
Yeah.
And secondly, the fact is that if you take on extra employees as a single business person and they don't prove to be what you want, and your clients start complaining about them, there's no way that you can get rid of them without having to go to the labor courts. So you don't take the risk. You work by yourself, and that's why 6 million of the 9 million small businesses in this country are single-person, single-employee businesses because people don't want to take the risk.
Yeah.
So we've got to create a more supportive climate.
Well, we're speaking to Clem Santa, a News 24 columnist, about the future of South Africa's economy. And we are taking your calls. Give us a call on 0891 104 207. Call us in with your questions and your comments for Clem Santa. That's 0891 104 207. You can also SMS us on 34701. That's 34701. SMSs are charged at R2. My name is Naledi Moleo, and this is the Talk Shop, standing in this evening for Maschaba Mushweshwe. Clem, let's talk a little bit about what Nigeria is doing, right? I mean, they're one of the fastest growing economies in the continent, and if we don't get our ducks in a row, Nigeria could replace us in the G20. What is it that we're doing wrong? What are they doing
right?
Let
me just give you the figures. Nigeria is now 2/3 the size of the South African economy. It's done very well out of its oil reserves. And it's got an economy growing at 7% per annum. Our economy is growing at 3% per annum, so they're growing 4% faster every year. And that if you actually then compound that, you'll see that the Nigerian economy could overtake us in the next 10 years. And when the oil price has been flat, they've still grown. Why? Because if you go to Lagos, you'll find the most incredible entrepreneurial energy. I had a friend who came back from Lagos the other day. He said the future of Africa is not Johannesburg, it's Lagos, because you just sense the entrepreneurial buzz there. And sure, there's a lot of bribery going on and stuff like this, but it's because of an absence of regulation that you have this entrepreneurial energy. And China, the government here talks about China and state-owned enterprises in China. I was talking to a young Chinese woman whose father is very close to the Politburo in China the other day, Politburo being the body that governs China. It's equivalent to our cabinet. And she said what people forget is that Deng Xiaoping in 1978 liberated the entrepreneurial soul of China. And now China is the second largest economy in the world because, and I quote her, of constructive economic anarchy. Constructive economic anarchy. What do we have here? We have incredible sort of regulation and everything else, which completely discourages the entrepreneurs.
That's very scary, because we have the regulation then, but we're almost suffocating our entrepreneurs. But do you think that you talk about the energy, the entrepreneurial energy that is in Lagos and the buzz that is there for entrepreneurism? But now here's the question: do you think that our state of education in South Africa also has an influence on our economic growth? Are we not encouraging young people in schools to be entrepreneurs?
Well, we're not. You see, I would love schools to have entrepreneurial programs where they have market days once a term, where you have to make something for market days that parents can buy, that you learn about cash flows and balance sheets and marketing yourself and brands and everything else. But you tell me of a single school in this country that is actually teaching kids about business concepts like that, and then asking them to use them. Even in the best private schools in this country, there isn't that kind of teaching. And yet, and this is the big point, schools are supposed to prepare you for the labor market that currently exists, not the one that existed 50 years ago when big business and the civil service and everybody else was employing people. Now, most people who come out of schools and university are going to have to either start their own businesses or join small businesses. So they should be taught, how to actually operate in that environment.
Okay, well, we're going to take a few callers. The number to call is 0891 104 207. That's 0891 104 207. Let's start off with Henry in Cape Town. Henry.
Yeah, good day, ma'am.
Good evening, Henry. How are you?
Yes, I'm trying to just react to what the gentleman said about the land, the land issue and the economy and the reputation of the country overseas.
Yes.
That is, to me, really nonsensical. Listen, in this country, there is an economy that is based on the financial sector, and if you shut the financial sector, the whole economy falls down. And there is another economy that is based on the land sector, that include the rural people and the rural economy. If you take that land from the rural people or from the from the people who depend on the land, you're killing that economy. Therefore, taking the land back legally does not mean that we have to depend on what Europe or America think. Because as we speak, the whole economy of the land people has been destroyed because the land has been taken from them. So if we rethink economy, we need to make sure that we give some land back to these people who owe their lives on the land.
Well, thank you very much.
To me, that is unfair to think that the reputation of the country overseas supersedes the importance of these people who depend on the land.
Yeah,
that is very upsetting.
I'm good. Well, I hear that you're very passionate. We're gonna give Clem an opportunity to respond to your comment. For now, though, let's just take a call from Charles in Cape Town. Charles.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and good evening to the listeners. First of all, I just want to say I'm a great admirer of Mr. Santa, but one thing that I do want to take issue with is the fact that it's so often contended that it's the labor laws that offer or that pose a boundary to people being employed in the first place. And I want to take issue with that. First of all, I don't believe the labor laws are too onerous. You have a 3-month probationary period during which you can evaluate someone's performance. If someone isn't performing, there's a mechanism, a warning system through which you can go, which you can then dismiss people. I don't see why we should go back to a situation where someone can be fired simply because the boss is having a bad day, and that person has no recourse to the law. I don't believe that labor laws should be changed at all. If anything, big business and business in general should become more socially aware and responsible. How many people are earning less than 3,000 Rand a month in this country, whilst the boss earns 100,000 or hundreds of thousands of rands per month? That's all I want to say. Have a good evening, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Charles. We're also going to hear what Seelan has to say. Seelan in Durban, hello.
Hi, good evening to you and your guest. I just want to comment on what Charlotte said a few minutes ago. I run a micro enterprise. It's all very well saying you have mechanisms within the Law and Labor Relations Act to dismiss somebody. But as a micro enterprise, when you engage in that process, your business comes to a standstill, point number one. Two, you're not being paid for it. All right? So it puts a severe financial strain on a micro enterprise to dismiss somebody that you're not happy with, either through incompetence or whatever the case may be. The second point is, to Charles again, you must have a look at the Labor Relations Act and show me where the rights of the employer are enshrined. I've studied the Act. It's all in favor of the employee. It's a very difficult thing. It's a very one-sided Act, okay? So that's the starting point. So yes, your labor laws are onerous, more especially for micro enterprises. For me, as a micro enterprise, I'm very reluctant to employ somebody, all right? The second problem that you face in this country is a question of work ethic, you know? People today seem to think to have a job is a right. And secondly, when they come to work, they don't come with the right attitude, you know? They come to work and you've got to virtually drag the work out of them, so to speak. And the only time they come to life, unfortunately, is when they go to strike. You go on strike and then, you know, you wonder if it's the same person that you employed all these years. So the question, the point that I want to raise is there has to be a change in the national psyche in terms of the approach and attitude to work.
Right.
People need to change their focus. And I'll tell you what, if we do that and we have a change in the psyche and you raise the consciousness, a lot of these problems would automatically disappear. And I wouldn't be discouraged from employing people as a micro enterprise.
Work ethic is a big thing. Thank you very much for that comment, Seelan. We're also going to hear from Gavin in Johannesburg. Gavin, hello.
Yes, hi, good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I'm actually also very passionate about this topic. And I think, you know, one of the things that Clem was saying was we're needing to change our education system. And I think that's really one of the key things, is that our children have to come out of the school environment thinking that they're not actually going to get a job, and that they have to be trained or train themselves in the skills to actually create their own jobs. And that's something, you know, that every single child that I come into contact with, I try and tell them that, and the parents, that, you know, especially, you know, I'm a white male, and I think that the best thing that ever happened was 12 years ago, I was retrenched out of big business. I started my own little business, and I've been going successfully now for 12 years. And that's the future of South Africa, is big corporates are no longer employing people. And if they do employ people, it's always this boom and bust cycle of retrenchments and people out of jobs and then finding jobs. Whereas if you go and we start looking and getting people trained in entrepreneurial skills and trained in them providing their own jobs for themselves, we will be a far, far better country.
That's true.
And I really think that's the kind of aim where we need to be going, yes.
Well, thank you very much for your call, Gavin. Speaking on also the point that Clem had alluded to a little bit earlier on about how our education system really needs to start educating young people on how to be more entrepreneurial. We're going to continue with the discussion, and I'd like to give Clem an opportunity to also respond to some of the questions and comments that we got from the callers. But for now, though, let's take a little break, and we'll be back right after this.
The Talk Shop.
It is SAFM, South Africa's news and information leader, 104 to 107. My name is Naledi Muleo on the Talk Shop, taking over this evening standing in this evening for Maschaba Mushweshwe. Today we're discussing the future of South Africa's economy, speaking to Clem Santa, columnist for News 24. I'm still taking some of your calls on 0891 104 207 and SMSs on 34701. That's 34701. SMSs are charged at 2 rand. Let's take a look at some of the SMSs that we've gotten. A question coming in saying, what are Mr. Santa's views on the youth wage subsidy? And then we have another SMS coming in saying, everything Clem says makes complete sense, but is a total anathema to the likes of COSATU. And then we have another SMS coming in saying, we have the jujus of this world to thank for destroying our image abroad about nationalization. This is Harry in Port Elizabeth. Clem, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to some of the comments and questions that we got. We have Harry in Pietermaritzburg, in PE rather, saying that we have to thank the likes of Julius Malema for destroying our image abroad, talking about nationalization and so forth. And then we also had a caller early on talking about how land reform isn't to blame for our failing economy. What is your view?
Yeah, Naledi, thanks. Very lively listenership. Firstly, let's deal with Julius Malema. I give him full marks for raising the issues, probably more than anybody else over the last 2 years. He has shown that we have not got an economic democracy, and I thank him for that. It's just that his solutions are dead-end solutions, and so that's why I propose an economic CODESA, because he is quite right. You cannot possibly have an economy, which is like it is today, with too much of the wealth and the and the wealth creation in too few hands. So that's why we have to have a big event which actually meets the kind of fears that have been raised by what he is saying. But equally on the land issue, I feel very strongly that we need an agridesa, which is sort of an agricultural equivalent to the CODESA, where you get the big commercial farmers, the emerging farmers, the government, the land bank, the unions together to negotiate a proper program of land reform in this country, because it is very clear that up till now it hasn't worked. 90% of the land that has been passed over to new farmers has actually not actually produced the requisite number of crops. So we're failing, and the only way we're actually going to make it work is to actually have proper negotiations on land ownership, which actually leads to measurable outcomes. In other words, you end up by giving each of the parties a list of targets and saying this is the time when you have to meet those targets, because one of the problems in South Africa has always been implementation. And so, we've got to have an economic CODESA and also an agridesa and produce clear targets. And I'd like to say about land, it is a red flag, because I can understand the frustration of people. But equally, I can understand why farmers here also feel very fearful, because what are they doing? They're trying to run their own business. They've lived on a farm for a long time. They want, certainty of the rules of the game. And until we actually get resolution on that, you won't get farmers investing in new machinery. And then, as far as the labor laws are concerned, I'm happy with the labor laws for big business. No problem at all with the points that were made about big business. But I do feel, as one of the listeners said, that if you're a micro enterprise, you can actually hire and fire at will. And I know this sounds unfair, but it is a small business. You can't go and spend days in court. And so, you get this fear that if you hire anybody, and even after 3 months they've appeared okay, you'll have this problem if something goes wrong. And then as far as the youth wage subsidy is concerned, absolutely, one of the real problems in this country is an abnormally high youth unemployment rate. 45%. I mean, 45% is out of sight. I mean, Spain has a 45% youth unemployment rate. That's about the only country I know with such a high youth unemployment rate. But one of the things that was mentioned by a couple of Western embassies recently was that the characteristic that all the Arab countries that went through the Arab Spring, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and now Syria, have had, and Yemen, is abnormally high youth unemployment, combined with alienation from the state by young people, combined with active social networks. And we have all three in South Africa. So I fully support any measures like the youth wage subsidy, like trying to get small businesses to take on young people by, as I said, relaxing labor legislation, possibly a national community service for young people, rather like the old national military service, but for betterment of communities. We've got to look at those ideas very quickly, because it's a dangerous condition to have such high youth unemployment in this country.
Well, I just want to go back to the labor law issue as well. Seelan had called in and spoke a little bit about how micro enterprises come to a standstill, especially when you're facing labor laws and such. And one of the things that he mentioned was perhaps incentives for complying for, especially for micro enterprises, with regards to the labor laws. Do you think that could also be an answer?
Yeah, it could. You can provide incentives to micro enterprise, and I certainly believe that you've got to have laws about employing people in decent conditions. In other words, whilst a person is employed, there's basic health, safety, environmental issues, and obviously conduct and things like that. So I've got no problem with those kind of laws because that governs normal human contact. But where I do have a problem is this point of hiring and firing people, because I can just promise you from talking to many, many different entrepreneurs, they will tell you that they would take on an extra 10 people tomorrow if they had more reasonable labor laws. And I know COSATU will jump up and down on this issue. But my point would be there are 6 million small businesses. If each of those small businesses could take on just an extra 5 people, that would be 30 million jobs. Not 5 million jobs, 30 million jobs, which would solve South Africa's unemployment problem. And I think
this is where the tug of war happens. I'm just going to come in there. I think this is where the tug of war happens with regards to, you got the labor laws that are regulating entrepreneurs in the country, and then you also have, COSATU that are advocating mostly for things like minimum wage in the country, which is a big issue. But I'm just going to take a caller. We have Brian in Sedgefield. Brian.
Good day, little lady.
Good evening, Brian.
I trust you are all well, and hi to Clem Sunter.
No, we are very
Mr. Sunter, we need you down in Sedgefield. We have lots of trends, as you know, that seem to be heading towards disaster. But no futurologist to come and tell our municipality which way to go. Mm-hmm. And we need you down here. We have got a wonderful situation in Sedgefield. We've got 1,000 professional men sitting twiddling their thumbs in retirement. And we've got a small group of people who are in need of training, of skills, of education. But we've never had a community development worker for one day out of our municipality.
Well, thank you very much for that call. We're also going to take Morunga in Vosloorus.
Good evening.
Good evening, Morunga. What is your question or comment?
Yeah, like Clem Fatma is saying that Nigeria and Lagos are growing. All the countries in Africa where black people fought for their freedom, they will progress, of course, because they don't have people like Clem Fatma to come and give them advice. For instance, one gentleman told him about the labor laws, that the labor laws, they are fair. He didn't give an answer because every time when they are asked about creating of jobs, they will always quote labor laws. Why didn't he give an answer? It's because he's not telling the truth. He's misleading our young and growing up children that he has our interest at heart. Clem Fatma does not have our interest at heart. Mm-hmm. Every time when we talk about nationalization and equity, then he will come up and talk about how we have to talk and discuss how we can create jobs. During Thabo Mbeki's era, the economy was good. What did the big business do? Nothing. Zilch. Every time when they are supposed, it's because every time they are begged to come to the table, and they are not interested. And all these countries, Nigeria, Lagos, you call them, they were never subjected to this cruel apartheid a system that was subjected to our own people. We have children with degrees, as it is now. Do they give them chance to get skills? No. At first they said they want educated children. Children went to school, came with their degrees. When they're supposed to give them chance to do on-job training, they move the goalpost and say, no, they want skills. How many, with a subsidy from the government, have these companies trained our youth to come from from school? Nobody. So I'm saying yes. Zimbabwe, Lagos, you name it, they are going to go flying with their economy when they are being delayed by people like Clem Santner and his cohorts.
Moronga, thank you very much for your
in South Africa.
Thank you very much for your comment. I'd like to give Clem just the opportunity. This is just to wrap it up. Really, your response to some of the comments that were made by Moronga and even Brian saying that we'd love to have you in Sagefield. Just a closing comment and just a response to our last two callers, Clem.
Yeah. Well, let me take the last caller because. My point is that there is a legacy of apartheid, and you can actually say that big business hasn't done enough. So I would agree with that. And please, I'm not trying to stand in the way of anybody or offer excuses. I just want to see a fairer environment in which people can open their small businesses, because that is the difference between Nigeria and us. We do not have a fair environment for small business because there are two reasons. One is the legislation. Then there is the question of non-payment of small businesses, and this big business is to blame for that. And then there is thirdly this whole question of the country has some very big businesses which dominate particular economic spaces, and we've got to find a way of accommodating, lots of small businesses in the same space. So that's why you've got to have the kind of discussion, and it's not to try and camouflage anything, it's to try and produce a decent result like Nigeria. And the question of, Sagefield is that, you've got all these, I call them silver foxes, the people who've actually had experience in business and who dearly would like to help entrepreneurs, actually set up their own accounting systems and marketing systems, just generally provide backup for small businesses. And nobody yet has asked all these silver foxes who exist in South Africa to actually come together as a group and provide that kind of support. So, as I said, the key to the future of this country lies with the entrepreneurs. And that is what makes countries fly, like Nigeria and other African countries, is the entrepreneurs are coming through. So, yes, we've got to sort of outlive the legacy of apartheid, but we must keep in mind that the future vision of this country is the entrepreneur, and particularly the young entrepreneur, and say, how are we going to celebrate and challenge people to become entrepreneurs?
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us this evening. That was Clem Santner, a columnist at News 24, talking to us about the future, the economic future of South Africa. Really speaking a little bit about how we really need to stimulate entrepreneurism in South Africa, and really how do we then understand the labor laws and how they affect entrepreneurs in our country. Thank you very much to Clem for that discussion. Thank you very much to our callers as well. Thank you very much to our callers as well. Thank you very much to our callers as well. Thank you very much to our callers as well. Thank you very much to our